Emily Turner had lived in her neighborhood for nearly 2 decades. She was in her early 60s, a widow who carried herself with quiet dignity. Her days began with a cup of tea, the sound of birds in the yard, and the gentle fragrance of her rose garden. Those roses weren't just flowers. They were memories. Her late husband, Mark, had planted them with her when they bought the house 20 years ago. Every bloom reminded her of the man she had loved and lost. The neighborhood, Cedar Hills, was calm and suburban, the kind of place where children played on sidewalks and neighbors waved while mowing their lawns. The HOA, the Cedar Hills Homeowners Association, had always existed in the background. Emily paid her dues, followed the rules, and lived peacefully. But all of that changed when a new HOA president took over. His name was Richard Collins, a man in his 50s with slicked-back hair, an expensive watch, and a permanent sneer. He was known for being arrogant, controlling, and obsessed with enforcing rules. Where past presidents were lenient, Richard was merciless. One morning, Emily opened her mailbox and found a letter stamped with the HOA's seal in bold red. Violation notice. Your rose garden exceeds the allowable height and is not within approved design standards. Remove immediately within 14 days or face fines. Emily froze. She read the letter again and again, her hands trembling. Her roses? The roses Mark had planted? She could never remove them. She dialed the HOA office, her voice calm but pleading. Please, this garden is special. My husband planted it before he passed away. These roses are not just plants, they are memories. Richard's cold voice cut through the line. Rules are rules, Mrs. Turner. If we make an exception for you, we'd have to make it for everyone. Remove them or face daily fines. That's final. Emily hung up, tears filling her eyes. That evening, she sat on her porch, staring at her roses in the fading sunlight. She whispered softly, Mark, I won't let them take you away from me. The storm had begun. Richard wasted no time turning Emily's life into misery. Within days, she began receiving more violation letters. One fined her because her grass was half an inch too tall. Another claimed her garden gnome was not HOA-approved decor. Then came the threat. If she didn't comply, the HOA would place a lien on her home. For Emily, who lived on her late husband's pension, these fines were devastating. But Richard didn't care. He thrived on control. His smug smile during HOA patrols in his golf cart became a symbol of fear in the neighborhood. One afternoon, Emily caught him trespassing in her yard, taking photos of her roses. She stormed outside. You don't belong on my property, she snapped. Richard smirked. This isn't your property, Mrs. Turner. It's HOA property, and you signed the rules when you moved here. These roses are coming out, whether you like it or not. For the first time since Mark's death, Emily felt something stronger than grief, anger. She went back inside, opened an old drawer, and found Mark's leather journal. Inside, she discovered a note he had once written. Never let anyone push you around, Em. You're stronger than you think. Her hands shook as she held the note, but her heart hardened. Richard thought she was weak and easy target, but Emily wasn't going to back down. That night, under the glow of her porch light, she whispered into the night sky, I'll fight, Mark, for us. Emily began researching HOA laws late into the night. She learned that in her state, HOA regulations could not override property rights entirely. There are legal protections, especially for sentimental and memorial property. But lawyers were expensive, and Emily's savings were thin. She felt hopeless until a knock at the door changed everything. It was Sarah, her young neighbor, a single mother with 2 kids. She looked nervous as she spoke. Emily, I saw what Richard's been doing to you. He fined me too, for leaving my son's bike outside overnight. It's not right. You're not alone. Soon, more neighbors began to share their stories. A veteran fined for flying the American flag on Memorial Day. A retired teacher threatened because her mailbox paint was slightly faded. A family nearly forced to sell their home from endless fines. Richard wasn't just targeting Emily. He was terrorizing the whole neighborhood. Emily realized she couldn't fight this battle alone, but together they had power. She invited neighbors to her backyard one evening. Dozens showed up, hesitant at first, but soon sharing their anger. Emily stood before them, her voice steady. They can bully one of us, but they cannot silence all of us. This neighborhood belongs to us, the families who live here, not to a man with a clipboard. For the first time, Emily wasn't just fighting for her roses. She was fighting for everyone. They drafted a petition to recall Richard as HOA president. They collected signatures, documented evidence of his abuses, and prepared for a showdown at the next board meeting. The night of the HOA board meeting arrived. The community hall was packed with residents, their faces tight with anger and anticipation. Richard sat at the front of the room, smug and confident, certain no one would dare oppose him. But then Emily walked in, surrounded by dozens of neighbors. She carried a binder stuffed with letters, photographs, and testimonies. She stood before the board and spoke firmly. For months, we have endured harassment, intimidation, and unjust fines. This is not leadership. This is abuse. And tonight it ends. She presented the petition. Nearly every homeowner had signed it. Gasps filled the room as board members flipped through the pages. Richard's face turned red with fury. He banged his fist on the table. You people need me. Without rules, this place will fall apart. But one by one, neighbors stood up to speak. The veteran with tears in his eyes. The teacher with her trembling voice. The young mother clutching her child's hand. Every story was another nail in Richard's coffin. Finally, the board voted. Richard Collins was removed as president of the HOA. The room erupted in cheers. Emily closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but triumph. She had honored her husband's memory. She had protected her roses. She had defended her dignity. In the weeks that followed, the HOA reformed its rules to be fair and compassionate. The community grew closer, united by their struggle. And Emily's roses? They bloomed brighter than ever, a symbol of resilience. One morning, she knelt by the roses, touched a bloom gently, and whispered, "We did it, Mark. We won." Weeks had passed since Richard Collins was removed as HOA president, but the neighborhood of Cedar Hills felt entirely different. The fear that once lingered over every lawn, every mailbox, and every garden was gone. In its place was a renewed sense of freedom and community. For Emily Turner, life had shifted in ways she could hardly describe. The first morning after the recall, she walked outside with her tea and stood among her roses. The blooms were brighter, fuller, as if even the garden itself had breathed a sigh of relief. She touched a petal and whispered, "We did it, Mark. We really did it." Neighbors began stopping by her home, not just to admire the roses, but to thank her. Sarah, the young mother, came with her children and hugged Emily tightly. "You gave us all courage," she said. "We were afraid to speak, but you showed us how." Soon, the community decided to make changes. A new HOA board was elected, one that valued fairness and compassion. Instead of using rules as weapons, they worked to support families, maintain harmony, and celebrate the uniqueness of each home. One Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood gathered for a block party, the first one in years. Tables were set up on the street. Children played freely, and laughter filled the air. Emily brought a basket of roses to share with everyone. As she handed out the blooms, she noticed something in the neighbors' eyes: gratitude, respect, and unity. Later that evening, Sarah stood and raised her voice. This victory wasn't just about roses or fines. It was about all of us realizing that no one, no matter how powerful, has the right to bully others into silence. Emily reminded us of that. The crowd applauded, and Emily felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but she understood something now. Her fight had given the community back its voice. That night, as the stars shone above Cedar Hills, Emily sat on her porch once more. She held Mark's old leather journal in her lap, the one with his note, "You're stronger than you think." She smiled softly and whispered, "You were right, Mark. I was stronger than I knew." From that moment on, Emily's roses were no longer just a memory of her husband. They had become a symbol of resilience, of standing tall in the face of cruelty, and of a community that had found its strength. And though Richard Collins was gone, the lesson he left behind would never be forgotten. When good people unite, no bully can ever win.